Well, I intentionally have not heard the story that you perhaps have not heard yet. I wanted to really hear it firsthand from Brantly Millegan himself. His story is very unique in that Brantly is a solid Catholic, loves his faith, a convert to the faith, and yet he was absolutely and will be absolutely at the heart of these new technologies. Brantly Millegan has been a part of the crypto community since 2015. My sense is that he really could be perhaps the most well-known, strong, believing Catholic in the space, well-known in terms of those who know his name. At the very least, I think he's maybe the coolest Catholic in the space, but he may also be the most well-known. He led the core team that developed Ethereum Name Service, ENS, and he was the creator of the sign-in with Ethereum standard. He's also the founder and editor-in-chief of something that I loved before I knew that he was the founder of. It's something called ChurchPOP. It's a Catholic cultural brand. ChurchPOP's content is hard to resist when it comes across our emails with the fabulous teaser lines of meet 7 Catholics who love their faith in Hollywood and other popular treatments of the faith like that. ChurchPOP is now a property of EWTN. Brantly studied philosophy at Wheaton College. He has a master's degree in systematic theology from the University of St. Thomas in Minnesota, and he did doctoral work in moral theology at the Catholic University of America. Raised an evangelical Christian, he joined the Catholic Church in 2010. He lives with his wife and 7 children in Greenville, South Carolina. Please welcome Brantly Millegan.
All right. Hey, everybody. Happy to be here. I'm just going to share my story. So I was, as you mentioned, born into a Protestant family, went to a Methodist church growing up, switched to a Baptist church. At the same time, I went to Catholic school 1st through 12th grade, even though we weren't Catholic. My parents just kind of viewed it as like a private school alternative. The public schools in our area weren't very good. And it was at those Catholic schools that I was exposed to the Catholic faith and Catholic practices for the very first time. Looking back, honestly, the schools weren't necessarily like perfect. Theologically, I'd say, they were sometimes a little wishy-washy, kind of more liberal. But what they did give me, they gave me the Mass, because we went to Mass. And I otherwise would never have gone to Mass, right? I had that kind of in my life, learned Catholic prayers, devotions, and I knew Catholics. Something a lot of Catholics don't understand is that for many like evangelical Protestants, oftentimes the only Catholics they know are ex-Catholics who were nominal, who founded Jesus in their evangelical church. And as a result, a lot of Protestants think, oh, just like Catholicism is all dead, nobody knows Jesus, and because all the people they knew, found Jesus in their church. But that wasn't the case for me. I knew, obviously nominal Catholics, and there's nominal Protestants too, but I knew a lot of serious Catholics. I got that from the school. So I really benefited from that. And it was really in high school, when I was old enough, I started to think like, well, what do I think of Catholicism? And I remember thinking Catholicism could be one of 3 things. There's kind of 3 ways I could think about it. The first was Catholicism is totally false. It's like demonic. I need to like save people out of the Catholic Church. Right? This is like an option. This was, what the Protestant reformers thought, like Martin Luther specifically thought this, right? That's kind of a classic Protestant view. Another viewpoint would be, well, Catholicism, it's kind of wrong, but it's kind of true, and I don't need to become a Catholic, but I don't need to save other people, and we live and let live, and it's kind of we're all fine. That was an option. And then the third option was, maybe Catholicism actually just is true, and like I need to join. Like I'm obligated to join if I want to follow Jesus Christ. So I was thinking about this, and a key thing I realized was this. This might not seem like really big, but it was for me. Christianity is a revealed religion, and it's not a discovered religion. What I mean by that is It's not like someone just went into the jungle and meditated and discovered truths about the world and is telling other people, and that's religion, right? Empirical knowledge, empiricism is a way to understand the world, right? Obviously, science, and even in the spiritual realm. I mean, you can learn from trial and error, like, oh, these prayers are help me in my spiritual life and things like this. But at its core, the core of Christianity is that we only know certain things because God told us. And specifically, in its fullness, in the person of Jesus Christ in the first century. What this means is that Christianity is what was revealed in the first century. That's it. So even if somebody came up with a version of Christianity, in the 18th century or the 4th century, whatever it was, even if I like it, I think it makes sense, irrelevant, it's not what Jesus revealed because it didn't come from the first century, therefore it's not Christianity. And I thought, maybe I could this seems like something I could determine, like study the early church. So of course I started studying the church fathers. This is a very common story of many converts. And of course what I discovered was that they are clearly Catholic. I mean, they call themselves Catholics. They have bishops, priests, and deacons. The Bishop of Rome has a particular role. They pray to the saints. They pray for the dead. They believe in purgatory. They have Mariology. They reserve relics of saints. This is even in the 2nd century. I mean, one of the earliest accounts, actually, of a Christian martyrdom is the martyrdom of St. Polycarp, and they reserve his relics afterwards because they say they want to venerate it. I mean, clearly Catholic, not Protestant. This was very obvious to me. And basically what I realized was Christianity is Catholicism. And I think if Catholicism is false, Christianity is false, and vice versa. Another key thing for me was I met my future wife, and she was not thinking about Catholicism at all. But we got engaged, and a very practical question came up. Very practical. What contraception are we going to use? And that was the question for us. It was not, whether we were, but it was what kind. We were kind of thinking about that. And I said, hey, I'm thinking about Catholicism. Why don't we read this thing, Humanae Vitae? I heard Catholics are against contraception. I don't really know why. We're not going to follow it, but they might have some insights that could be useful for us. And she, thought this was stupid, but she humored me and was like, okay, I'll read it. So we both read that, and it rocked our world. It did. I mean, it totally changed our lives. Reading it once, I know it sounds crazy, but it really did. And it really impacted us, and we were like, holy crap, we think they're right. We were already engaged and everything. I mean, seriously, and this is a very practical thing. We could have children right away. We weren't planning on that, right? This is a major thing. Anyway, so we actually converted on that issue before we became Catholic. And then we got married as Protestants, and then later joined the church about a year later. Praise the Lord. Yes, thank you. And we have these 7 beautiful children. And that's me, my wife, our 7 kids, and her mother is also in that picture. Our 7th child was just born about 2 months ago, and this is after his baptism. Yes, we joined the church, got a master's in systematic theology, as he mentioned, did some doctoral work at Catholic University of America. Okay, another key thing. Around this time, when I was becoming Catholic, I started a blog called Young Evangelical and Catholic, because I was like, I need to tell other people why I'm becoming Catholic. This seems crazy. This is a very common thing. There's lots of convert blogs. This was in 2010, and kind of got me into the blogosphere and online Catholic media and writing. After this, I joined Aletheia. Their English edition helped actually launch their English edition. It was there for a couple years, left that, and then in summer 2014, I started ChurchPOP. So I created this and launched it August 11, 2014, and praise the Lord, it found quite a bit of success, kind of right away. And I actually had a couple people contact me and said, hey, Brantly, we think this is great. Can we acquire you or something like this? And I was like, whoa, I wasn't even considering that. I ended up getting connected with EWTN, it's funny, when I was talking to them about possibly them acquiring it, I don't know if you guys remember, the Boston Globe launched a publication that year called Crux. Crux now, I think .com or .org or something like this with John Allen Jr. And their editor contacted me and said, hey, we'd like to work with you too. And I remember saying, well, actually, I'm talking to EWTN about being acquired. And they said, well, maybe we want to acquire you too, which was really convenient to have multiple people interested. Ended up going with EWTN. EWTN acquired it in early 2015, so just like a few months later. EWTN has been wonderful. They've helped me expand it into 4 languages: English, Spanish, Portuguese, and Italian. Our Spanish edition is actually our biggest one. And here's a funny thing. Some people ask me this questions like this before. This is actually our best article ever by a long shot. It seems super simple. It's not like fancy. It's how all the apostles died and where you can find their remains today. I mean, let me tell you, there's something about that just like hits people's brains a certain way. Like across cultures, we've translated this into other languages. It's the biggest in like those editions. It's funny how these things go. Okay, so crypto. How do I get into crypto? So generally speaking, crypto goes in like 4-year cycles, market cycles, for whatever reason. So like, let's say if the stock market goes in like 10, 15-year cycles, crypto, for whatever reason, has tended to have 4-year cycles, 1-year bull market, 3-year bear market. This has been fairly consistent with kind of a few exceptions. In 2013 was a bear market year. Bull market year. During the bull markets, there's lots of excitement. It hits the news. There's kind of articles about it. There's lots of hype. A whole new crowd of people comes into the industry. And then the bear market comes. A lot of them leave, but some of them stay. And each time the core group gets bigger and bigger. It was in 2013, during that bull market, that I first heard about Bitcoin. In that spring, kind of started following it. And but I would say it was in very beginning of 2015 that it became like a full-time passion for me. It was around that time when it really hit me how revolutionary this technology is, that this was going to be a very big deal, and kind of became the thing I was focused on a lot, in my spare time and things like this. It was also in that year that Ethereum launched, in that summer. I remember that I didn't really get it at first. Also, in 2015, I wrote this article on ChurchPOP, 5 reasons Catholics should be taking Bitcoin seriously. The article is still up. It's a little dated because the technology has evolved a lot since then, but a lot of the ideas actually are still relevant. Okay, so a key thing to know about blockchain technology is the big takeaway is not, can I make lots of money, or is there this or that? I mean, that is potentially true, but that's not the core of it. The core of it is that blockchain technology is a major breakthrough in computer science. There is a genuine innovation here. It's not just that people got the idea of like, hey, let's start like online Ponzi schemes or something like that. That's not what happened. There is that, but that's not what happened here. Is that there's a genuine breakthrough, and it solved what was previously believed to be an unsolvable computer science problem. There had been very smart computer scientists and who had been interested in figuring out, is there a way that we can have scarce digital resources without a trusted third party? And if you think about that, that sounds like a really hard problem. Like, how would you possibly do that? And for decades, people kind of worked on this. There was an email newsletter of people kind of focusing on this. There wasn't much progress. And blockchain, and Bitcoin is the first one, solved that problem in a very clever way, putting together some obscure technologies and mathematical algorithms and things like this into a new way that kind of solved that problem. It's a new computing paradigm. And what I mean by that is that there are kinds of things that were previously impossible to do that are now possible to do, that you could only do in a blockchain environment. And a key way that this is important is usually when you have a new technological paradigm, the mistake that most people make is they think, oh, I'm just going to keep on doing what I'm doing, but do it with the new technology, right? And that usually that is true to some degree, but you aren't getting most of the benefits from that. You're like, well, I was already doing it before, like, why do I need the new thing, or something like that. Usually the most interesting things are things that you couldn't do before that now you can do, right? So for example, like in the early web, you can like take a newspaper and I guess just like put it on the internet. I mean, that's interesting. I mean, there's some benefits to that, but like something like social media, you couldn't do before. And now you can like trade all these things around, share them, and things like that. That's radically transformed the world. Much more interesting than just like, well, I'm reading my newspaper online or something like that, even if, there is some change there. And I would say, again, this can sound extreme, but I really do believe this. I think it's arguably the most consequential invention of the last 15 years, blockchain technology, in terms of impact in the world. And the only other technologies that I would even put at that level would be things like there have been some major breakthroughs in AI and machine learning in the last 10 years, reusable rockets, obviously with SpaceX, potentially massively historic, and things like with CRISPR, with gene editing, and potentially very, very big. I mean, it's like at that level. It's at that level. Anyway, I was involved in the Bitcoin block size limit debates in 2015-16. I invested in the DAO in 2016, if that means anything to you. If not, you can look up the DAO in 2016. It was a massive, massive disaster in the Ethereum community in 2016. In 2017, I created this website called Flippening Watch. It was just comparing Bitcoin and Ethereum. That kind of like went viral in 2017. I went to DevCon 3 in 2017. It's this Ethereum conference. That was the first crypto conference I went to. And I was involved in some smaller projects in 2017, 2018. But then, in early 2019, I joined the ENS core team. So ENS stands for the Ethereum Name Service. It's a decentralized naming and identity system that also extends DNS. I'll explain more of this in a second. It's arguably the most successful non-financial application in the crypto space. And that's actually a key thing to know. So, blockchain technology can be used for currencies, obviously. I mean, everybody's heard of that. There's DeFi, which is different, like financial products and things can be accomplished with protocols. But there's a whole area of the blockchain industry that has nothing to do with finance. And that's when I say, like, it's going to touch everything in the world. It's everything, including things outside of finance. ENS was launched in 2017, but it was at the very beginning of 2019 that I joined that team. So I'm just going to talk just a little bit about what ENS is and what it does. There are three main use cases for ENS. So you can get yourself a name, and it can be your Web3 username. So the idea here is that you can own that name yourself. It's self-custody. And other services, when you connect or log in to them, can use that username. So the idea is it's a username that you own that you take with you across services. So in the old way, let's say in the Web 2 world, you have a username on Instagram, and you have a different username and account on Facebook and Twitter, and these things don't interoperate, right? They're different. They're siloed out. In Web 3, you can have a username that you own, you take with you to services. It completely flips the paradigm. So this is just like an example of what it can look like, on a dApp. Like I have my name and also like an avatar there that also I set once and then follows me everywhere without a centralized service involved. You can also simplify crypto payments. So you can have one name, but then you can put all your different crypto addresses, an Ethereum address, Bitcoin address, Solana address, whatever you want. And then if anybody ever wants to send you some tokens or an NFT or something like that, rather than saying, oh, here, let me get my Solana address or my Ethereum address, or what was my Bitcoin address again? You just say, hey, send it to Brantly.eth, and it just works. So that's very, very useful. The third is decentralized websites. So you can store your website files on a distributed file storage network like IPFS. I won't go into what that is. That's a distributed file sharing network. And then you can access it with ENS. And in such a case, it's possible that people can use that without, again, any centralized dependencies, where you could be censored unfairly or something like that. There's also two types of names in ENS. So you've probably seen there are .eth names. Those are native to ENS. But ENS also allows you to import in names from DNS that you already own. So, so like if you have, Brantly.com, you can actually import that into ENS and also use Brantly.com there as well. And you can like receive Bitcoin payments with Brantly.com or something like that if you'd like to. It's a very powerful thing. A key thing to know about ENS, and this is true of many protocols in the industry, is that it's not a company. ENS is not a company. It's not really a product. It's a protocol on the same level of like DNS or SMTP, that's the email protocol, or HTTP, that's the World Wide Web protocol. It's a protocol. So I said that I was working for a company. So I was working for a nonprofit, which is the de facto developers and maintainers of the protocol. But we don't own it, we don't control it. Once the code gets pushed out, it is self-running. The code is open source. Other people also contribute. You just need somebody who's kind of like driving the project forward. Also then, about a year ago, we launched a DAO, the ENS DAO, and with token voting. This was a great success. It got a lot of attention. It's expanded the ENS community greatly. And the reason we have a DAO is because while most of ENS it just runs the smart contracts on Ethereum, it runs automatically. There's a couple elements of the ENS protocol where basically we don't know how to automate it. There are a couple things that require human discretion. And if we found out a way to make it so that we could automate it, we would. Maybe we eventually will. But for the meantime, we have to have human discretion. Previous to this, we just had like a 4-7 multisig. What that means that there were 7 people with keys, and as long as 4 of them signed off on something, we could make the necessary change. That's fine, but we thought we could do better with a DAO, where now there's like tens of thousands of people who can vote on things. It's more democratic, it's more decentralized. So ENS has that DAO. I'm also, around this time, helped create the Sign with Ethereum standard. So what is this? So basically, it's a standard way that people can sign into services using their Ethereum wallet. Now, a service, of course, has to make this an option. But it's a standard way that, like, if a service wanted to add that as an option, so let's say they have sign in with email, sign in with Google, sign in with Facebook, you've probably seen these before, they could also very easily add sign in with Ethereum. And when you get to that point, you just, you open up your wallet, you press a button, and it signs you into the service. And so you don't have to deal with different passwords. You also are not dependent on a centralized company because you control your Ethereum wallet yourself directly. So you have total control over it. And it's possible for you to use this as a single sign-on, potentially very, very revolutionary. Okay, so all this is going on. I joined the ENS team. I started leading that. Things are going great. We launched the DAO. We're getting tons of attention. Things are really blowing up. Got signed with Ethereum going. And then I got canceled. This just happened last February, so less than a year ago, I guess 9 months ago. And here's what happened. So it was February 5th, and I was out with my wife. We went to a Charlotte Hornets game. We live in Greenville, South Carolina, so it's not too far away. Having a good time, trying to not look at my phone. And during the third quarter, I started getting some messages from people of hey, Brantly, you need to delete this tweet, or something's going on. Or I'm like, what's going on? I don't really want to look at this. And I could see. So what happened was, in 2016 and other times around that era, I tweeted my opinions on things like I am against abortion, or I'm against gay marriage, and things like this. And some people kind of dug through my old tweets and found this, and they're like, oh my gosh, this is so terrible. I didn't know Brantly's a bigot, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, Brantly, do you still believe this? And I was like, yes, of course I still believe this. In fact, the first word on my Twitter bio is Catholic. I say Catholic, husband, father, and then I say other things. It's been like that for years. I've never hidden the fact that I'm Catholic. So I got home from the game. People were freaking out on Twitter. There were Twitter spaces against me and people tweeting, and some people invited me, said, hey, do you want to come on to Twitter Spaces? If you don't know what Twitter Spaces is, it's like a live audio chat where there's a couple people talking and then, an indefinite number of people can listen in. I did Twitter Spaces all the time. I was a very public person. People knew who I was. I was like, yeah, I'm not going to hide. Like, people know me and I know these people. I'm going to go on and sure, yeah, I believe this. So I went on and people were yelling at me. They were calling me a sociopath. They were comparing me to the Nazis and things like this. And I just stayed calm, and I said, yes, I do believe this. Look, I'm not going to try to debate these issues with you. I don't think this is a good, situation for that. You're not really in a good state of mind. But yes, I believe this. And by the way, tons of other people believe this, and we should have tolerance for each other. And I've never discriminated against anybody. No one's ever accused me of anything. There should be no problem here. And most of that Twitter Spaces actually was recorded. It's on YouTube if anybody wants to listen to it. It was about an hour long. So that was pretty crazy. So I got off that. Then I talked to the creator of VNS, this guy, Nick Johnson. And he said, yeah, I already knew you thought all these things. He didn't necessarily agree, but he said he already knew that I believe this. And he and other people on the team believe all sorts of things. And, it didn't really matter. And he said, he didn't think there should be an ideological litmus test for people to work together. He thought that what should matter is, are you good at what you do and are you respectful of other people? He said that was all true of you, so there's no problem. And really, this is an important thing to know. This was sort of the reflective of the values of what I would say kind of like early crypto. So early crypto was very libertarian, both left and right libertarian, meaning that people were kind of very live and let live, very freedom-oriented, and people didn't really fight about other things. Also, the crypto industry was relatively small, so you couldn't afford to be infighting about other things. We needed to kind of stick together. And so there was this mentality of there shouldn't be ideological litmus tests, it's okay. But what happened is, as crypto has gotten a lot bigger, particularly in the last 2 years, more people have come in, and there has started to be some people who are more woke-minded, right? They're more authoritarian of no, we don't just live and let live. We have to control everything. We have to shut down, our opponents completely. This was a new thing. And so basically, it was sort of a generational fight in the crypto industry. And I don't mean necessarily an age, but kind of when they had joined the industry of are we going to be more libertarian or authoritarian? And I even asked Nick, I said, hey, am I going to get fired? Because I'm not stupid. I know how these things go. And he said, oh, definitely not. Don't worry about it. So it was super late at night, went to bed, woke up the next morning. My Twitter had been suspended. Twitter claimed that I had engaged in targeted harassment, which was absurd. I definitely had not. In fact, it was the opposite. I had been the victim of targeted harassment, clearly. I kind of put out another statement just basically saying, yes, I believe this and many other people do and I've never mistreated anybody and shouldn't be a problem here. And then a few hours later, I got on another call with Nick and he said he had decided to fire me. Just like that. I mean, it was less than 24 hours on a weekend. It was wow, how quickly it happened. And he announced it. And I was fired from that position. And so it was kind of funny because this sort of became a symbol for the culture wars have come to crypto. So I even said this to people, I said, look, I'm not trying to be some conservative martyr. I've just been working in the industry, I was focused on this thing. I'm not interested in necessarily now go making the conservative martyr, speaking circuit and writing a book and blah, fine. Some people take that path. That's perfectly fine. But I was just really interested in working in the industry. But it sort of became this symbol of, are we going to allow the wokes to take over Web3 like we let them take over Web2? It kind of became this. And so a lot of people who maybe said, oh, I'm Catholic, or I'm Christian, Protestant Christian, or I'm a Muslim, or whatever. Many people said, I agree with Brantly, and I support him. But there were many people who said, I completely disagree with Brantly 100% on everything, but come on, the guy was a good guy, he never hurt anybody, and this is totally wrong, and we can't let the wokes take over. So it opened up the kind of this culture war rift in the industry that's been playing out the last few months and is still being played out. There's a lot of people who really, really don't want the crazy authoritarian people to take over the industry. So that's going on. So I got fired, and This is a bit complicated, but because I was so deeply involved in the project, I actually had positions at a couple different entities. So there was one, the core team that I got fired from. There was another organization separate called the ENS Foundation. I was one of the 3 directors of that. And that represented the DAO legally. So like if the DAO needed to pay taxes or something, you could pay taxes on its behalf. Or if it needed to sign a contract, we could do that on its behalf. I was one of 3 directors along with Nick, the guy who fired me, and another person from the team. And the way we had set that up, because it represented the DAO, is that the only way the DAO I could be fired from it is if the DAO voted to fire and replace me from that. So that took a couple weeks to kind of get organized and things. It couldn't just be done quickly because there wasn't just one person you could be pressured. You kind of had to organize a vote, have it go through the process and come to a vote. That happened about 3 weeks later, and the vote happened over the course of about a week. And amazingly, I won the vote to stay in the position. It was incredible. Yes, praise the Lord. It was very intense. It could have gone either way. I mean, it was just about 50-50. I barely squeaked by. I mean, I remember watching the countdown of the timer. The way the voting worked, all voting was public. You could see who was voting for who. And also people were allowed to change their votes up until the moment that the voting stopped. So until it actually closed, anything could happen. There were some people who voted one way, then there was an outcry against them, and they got pressured, and they changed the vote, and they even changed back and things like this. It was crazy. And barely squeaked by. And there were a lot of people who voted against me, obviously. There were a number of very high-profile people who publicly voted in support of me and even made a vigorous argument on Twitter in support of me, which I really appreciated a lot, which was great. But yeah, won the vote. So amazingly, I'm still a director of the ENS Foundation, along with the guy who fired me and another guy. They can't get rid of me. We have to work together, and that's it. I'm there, right? I'm in the system. So I was off Twitter about 6 months. I came back in August. So I'm back on Twitter. It's funny, after I got back from Twitter, so I mentioned signing with Ethereum. So in that project, like I said, it was my idea. I coined the term. I led the standardization process. As part of that, I actually picked another organization saying, hey, can you kind of take the reins of this and kind of keep this going, because I can't be managing this on a detail-oriented basis. And we had a bunch of people apply. I picked the organization. They were great. They've done a good job from a technical perspective. But after I got back on Twitter, I thought, you know what? I want to get back involved in that, maybe go to some of our community calls. And I found out that they had decided to ban me from their community calls for, I'm not joking, safety reasons, a video chat. This was crazy, so I tweeted about how crazy this is, and many people were very upset about it. That's going on. A nice thing, though, I will say about ENS and signing with Ethereum is that both are open source, and insofar as there might be an organization that is kind of maintaining it or controlling it, none of them have de jure control. They don't have legal control. They only have at most de facto control, meaning that they're just the main organization that is in fact kind of maintaining and doing things, but anybody could. So I still plan on being a part of signing with Ethereum and ENS, if only because we can't let the other people just completely capture these things. That's very important. Just a couple weeks ago, I went to DevCon 6. So DevCon, I mentioned earlier, DevCon, it's the main Ethereum conference put on by the Ethereum Foundation each year. I mean, there's tons of crypto conferences all over the place, but this is kind of considered the best one. I would say arguably the most important crypto conference each year is DevCon. Thousands of people, and it's hardcore developers. It's the people who are actually making the things. It's not just, flashy business people or speculators, blah, blah. In fact, talk of speculation is banned at the conference and stuff. It's just what you're actually building. Anyway, so this year it was in Bogota, Colombia. It's been all over the world, different places. So I went, and I had a big question mark of how am I going to be received? I don't know. Are people going to get mad at me? Are people going to try to cancel me there? I have no idea. So I thought, but I'm going to go because it's important that, like I said, that the people don't win. I'm still a part of it. And so I went, and let me tell you, praise the Lord, I was extremely warmly received. I mean, people were coming up and giving me hugs, taking pictures, oh my gosh, Brantly, you're my hero, things like this. And it was funny, they're always kind of talking a little bit, as an aside, like, hey, by the way, I totally support you and our whole team, we all support you, we're all on your side. That was totally, whack what they did to you. That was terrible. And people even saying things, like, I don't trust Nick anymore, and we see what happened. And this is a key principle. Just not what you hear people saying publicly doesn't always obviously accurately reflect what people think privately. And I've had huge numbers of people also online send me private messages saying they support me. Are you okay? This was totally terrible, everything like this. But I think it was a small number of people who kind of were very loud and kind of scared some people into making a quick decision. That's my interpretation of what happened. So I talked to hundreds of people. The only person who even said anything even slightly negative to me was one person who said, he indicated he's Catholic, although he's like, I don't believe the type of Catholicism you have, and you hurt people's feelings, and you should have just said you were sorry. And I was like, I disagree with you, but I'm not going to argue with it, with you about it here. And he was like, okay, and we were otherwise pleasant and moved on. No problem. There were no safety problems. Nobody got hurt. There was no big showdowns or confrontations. Perfectly fine. I was happy to be there. This is another key thing, too. People at the conference there and other people, in private messages have said things like, Brantly, I am Catholic, or I'm Muslim, or blah, 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 and I agree with you, and I am terrified that what happened to you is going to happen to me, and thank you for not backing down. Thank you for not apologizing when you shouldn't have, and I'm so glad you're still in the game, and you're on Twitter, and you're going to the conferences because you're still there, and you didn't back down. Yes. It encourages them. Like many people, again, it's like, I will tell you, I have seen fear in people's faces. People who both ended up opposing me just because they were terrified, not because they were against me, because they were terrified, and other people who secretly support me, but do so, of course, secretly because they are terrified. I have seen sheer terror in the faces of grown men, okay? It's pathetic, but it's the reality. And but if you don't back down, there can be a lot of power in that. And often there's way more people who support you than you think. And I've even had people say things like, they just respect the fact that I didn't back down. Like, that's it. They're like, oh, I disagree with you, but you showed integrity. The other people didn't show integrity. They showed disloyalty and things like this. Anyway, just some final comments here on the future. So, two main things I want to say. Blockchains are global coordination mechanisms, and the church is a global organization. These things go together, right? So if the church needs to, send money around or coordinate or make agreements or various things around the world, which the church does all the time, blockchains, cryptocurrency, that's your thing. That's your technology. It's made perfectly for the church. So absolutely, the church, and when I say it here, I mean like the institutional church, should be making use of blockchain technology. Absolutely. In fact, it's inevitable that they will. The question is just when. Quick story about that. So when ENS first launched in 2017, they had just .eth names, and they had some restrictions on the types of names you could register at that time. But I remember thinking, I might be one of the only Catholics in the world right now who's paying attention to this, and I should probably get some .eth names that are valuable, could be useful later. And so I have Catholicism.eth and Catolicismo.eth and other things. And one thing I tried to get was the Vatican.eth. I just thought, well, that might be useful. And at that time, there was an auction system where a blind auction where you would put in bids. You didn't know how much other people were bidding, and the whoever bid the highest after the reveal won. And I ended up bidding a certain, like 1 ether, which at the time was like $80 or something for it. And I won it, but I saw that the second place bid was 0.666 ether. And I was like, I bet somebody thought they were pretty clever for doing that, but I won it. So that person did not get that. Okay, yeah, there you go. And the last point is this. Okay. The crypto industry is setting the trajectory for the future of the world. This is absolutely true, and it is being built right now. Like the protocols, the applications that I think are going to be extremely important for not only years but decades to come are being built right now. And if you know the history of technology, often once something kind of gets set, it gets its network effects, and it basically doesn't change, right? So we're setting that trajectory. We're also setting up like governance systems, like I talked about the DAO, voting and who are delegates and things like this. This is being set up right now, okay? And if you want it to express and take into account Catholic values, then now is the time to make sure that happens. You can't not get involved, be out of the game when all of it's being set up, and then later complain, oh, why doesn't it respect, X Catholic value or Y Catholic value? If you want that, now is the time to do it. So I absolutely encourage not only, like I said, the institutional church to use it, but lay Catholics who have competency to get involved in the crypto industry and help shape the future of the world that we are building right now, because if we don't, somebody else will. And that is it. Thank you very much.